Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Conscious Pivot Podcast. I'm so happy to be here with you today, and I'm happy to be here. I'm just happy to be here. I mean, woke up at 4:30 this morning, my eyes wide open. I had stuff on my mind, which is a little unusual for me. And normally when I begin the day, I have my morning ritual, and so I get right into that practice where I don't sort of look at emails or get too business, too much in my head about business early, but I've kind of broke that practice. I broke that rule this morning, and I could feel it a few hours ago. I could feel that I was just a bit like less present, or even a little shaky even. And I didn't know whether that was the coffee or it was something else. And I determined it wasn't the coffee. It was really me just not getting in that quiet space and being in my heart early before the day gets going. Today was our daughter Eden's first day of school, first day of not school, but first day of her junior year of high school. She's the last one in our house to be going through high school. So it was beautiful. I put on my salmon colored pants, which is our little tradition. I have these ugly ass salmon pants that I've been wearing on the first day of school. I would come out to the school bus and embarrass all of our kids with these freaking pants. And so I'm still doing it. And that was a blast. So wherever you are right now, whether you're listening, you're watching, you're driving, you're operating heavy machinery, I hope you are in a great space, because I've got a great, amazing, beautiful individual that I get to share with you guys today. She's much more than a guest. She's a friend. We have a lot of very common, a lot of interests in common and things like that. And she really appreciates, life and the important things of life, like this breath we're taking right now. It's so sacred. There are people everywhere right now who are taking their very last breath. So to be in this moment, wherever we're meeting you, whatever you're doing, it's just beautiful to share a breath. And happy day, happy today. So her name is Christy Whitman. And as I said, she's just this divine being. She's been doing lovely work in the world, helping people in such a really authentic and impactful way for a lot of years. And I'm going to let her, as you know, because you know the style of the show, she'll share what's important about her that she would like you guys to know today in this moment. And then we're going to get right into the juicy pivot stuff that everybody loves so much, and then, of course, we'll circle it all up at the end with some practices to keep going and to be more resilient, to be able to pivot forward in life. So without further ado, my dear friend, Christy Whitman. Hey, Christy.
Hey, Adam. You have me in tears with the breath and all the beautiful things you're saying about me. Thank you. I'm very touched. Touched.
You are all that in a
bag of chips.
A bag of chips. We're both from the East Coast, right? So all that in a bag of chips. Yes.
Come on now.
How are you?
How you doing? I'm doing awesome. Really happy to be here with you.
Thank you. It's kind of our third try at this. It's kind of funny, right? The backstory of this podcast is that we got on Skype. We were going to do it on Skype the first time. And for some reason, we couldn't get the audio to work. It was bizarre, right?
And then Zoom wouldn't work. Like, we couldn't connect.
That was number two.
You were on Zoom and I couldn't connect. It was just, so we took some breath, we took some space, and now here we are. The energy cleared for whatever reason.
Totally. Yeah. And I know you spend part of the year in Arizona and part of the year in Quebec, beautiful Montreal, Quebec, Canada, yes, which is where you are now, right?
I am. I designed my life with my husband years ago, and we said, gosh, wouldn't it be nice to spend half the year in Arizona, half the year in Montreal, because his family's here, my family's there. Plus, we're chasing really good weather, because I know I don't want to be in Arizona in the summer, and I don't want to be in Montreal in the winter. So it perfectly pairs with each other that when it starts getting really bad weather in Arizona, we come to Montreal, and it starts getting bad here, we go to Arizona. So it's a nice cycle that we're in.
Yeah, what a nice talk about pivoting, right? Across the country, across the North America.
Yeah.
Way cool. So, would you share a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into some of that juicy pivot stuff.
Absolutely. You're asking me to share what's important, and I could talk about the roles that I play. I'm a mom of two boys. One's almost 7, the other one's 8. They're crazy, and I love them. I'm a wife. I'm in a very, very passionate marriage. Wasn't always like that. We had to work at that. But now it's like we could breathe into it and going, wow, we're more in love than we've ever been. We're going on 10 years of marriage this next month. And really had to work out our his stuff and my stuff came together perfectly matched, and then we had to kind of work it out. So now we're both in a free abundant space with each other, which is great. And we'll always have more work to do, but at the core of everything, I'm really a student, and I'm a student of life. I'm a student of universal laws. I'm not the same person that I used to be. I almost have a hard time relating with my family a lot of the times because I've changed so much in who I am now. But I'm a student, and then I teach what I learn. So, for example, with the universal laws, I will share an example of something that I was working with, struggling with, moving through in my own life, and then I just share my experience, and that's how I teach. I'm not one to tell people what they should do or give advice to somebody. I just say, this is what I did, and this is how I understand the universal laws, and this is how I apply it. And I've been living a really awesome life doing it. I just feel so blessed that what I get to do as a career, as a place of creative expression, that it's so prosperous and lucrative, and yet so fulfilling and spot on aligned for me. So I just feel blessed.
Yeah. Are you working on a book? I last time we were at a TLC meeting,
like
I didn't work.
Like,
what are you working on? Is that the better question?
oh my, well, it's funny because when I don't work on a book, I have the book work through me. And whenever I've written any of my books, literally it downloads through me. And I've had my, because I've had 2 books that hit the New York Times. And so I have my literary agent going, okay, when's your next book? And, what are you going to, and I'm like, I can't write like that. I can't just go, so today I'm going to write a story or a book about this. It just has to be like the divine just goes, okay, here's your assignment. And then I feel like the vessel that gets to birth it. And so for whatever reason, I literally have 4 projects that are, and you got to space it out, of course, because publishers don't want everything coming out all at once. But I just turned in my manuscript a couple weeks ago for Quantum Success in Your Career. So it's really taking the universal laws, specifically law of attraction, law of sufficiency and abundance, and applying it towards your career to be able to create just the vision of what you want your career to do for you. Whether it's, for me, years ago, I was a pharmaceutical rep and I made great money, but I had no passion and I had absolutely no sense of purpose. It actually went against who I was as a human being. Because if I get a headache, I'm going to go take some lavender essential oil drops and put it on my head rather than go take an Advil. So, I do things more natural. If I'm kinked somewhere, I go get a massage or I go get a Reiki healing. I mean, this is how I live my life. So for me to go into a doctor's office and have them, yay, prescribe more drugs,
pills. Just what we're looking for.
Yeah. And, have to talk about the side effects. Hey, it'll help this, but then sudden death and, like all this other kind of stuff. So it just I just felt so split. And the big thing for me is I wanted to feel aligned and on purpose. And I wanted to be passionate about what I was doing. And it was around that time that my book just downloaded through me, my first book, Perfect Pictures. And it's been doing it ever since. So
keep them coming. Keep the downloads coming. Yes. Well, thank you.
They always seem to come when I go on a cruise ship. This actually book that I just turned in, it was 3:00 in the morning, boom, wide open, and I'm hearing the voice, and I'm like, really? Because it's never convenient. It's not like it's 12:00 in the afternoon. Let's download. And so I'm like literally, crouched in the bathroom, sitting on the cold floor while the rest of my family's sleeping on a cruise ship, writing and writing and writing for hours. And, that's when it just happens to come through me. So I don't know when it's going to come, but I just say, all right, if you must.
This is a really important topic in so many ways, because to be present, that's a big topic. And corporate executives, CEOs of major companies, I think Walgreens just created a multi-million dollar wellness program for their employees and things like that. So mindfulness, it's not new. I mean, thank goodness it's getting its due, right?
Yes.
But what's it for? I mean, I don't know that there's a lot of description of where you apply presence and how important. I mean, in spiritual practice, I know what presence means for me. It's practicing the presence of God, and being in prayer or being in stillness it's a different thing that I'm looking for there, and I'm looking for connection. But presence, when it's not tied to spirituality, I think isn't well defined. What's the value in it? And, great athletes, for example, that talk about, and not just great athletes, but it's more, I think, often associated with an athlete that gets into a flow state, that gets into, gets out of their head. So when they're playing, they're out of their mind. They're, thank you. They're in the zone, right? That's presence. And access to the innate talent, the capability, the infinite capability that we have. It's interesting. I was rereading a book from so many years ago called The Inner Game of Tennis, Tim Gallwey. Great, incredible book. And it's a personal development book as much as it's a book about how to play great tennis, because it's all an inside-out game. Which is life, right? So it's like, what do you do with presence? Well, I mean, part of presence, and this is what triggered you when you said that, was to be listening, and how it is that you can listen when your voice and the voice in your head is quiet, not necessarily chattering or worrying or criticizing. So that at 3:00 in the morning, if you get called to action, to get the whisper, that you can be present to that and go, I'm about to get up out of bed and go crouch down in a bathroom, in a tight little one of those like bathrooms on a cruise ship. It's like a airplane bathroom, right?
Yeah.
And just write until
my butt goes numb, because it did.
Yeah.
I got on my butt's asleep.
Right. And on the other end of that is a book.
Yeah.
And I think people are, it's important for folks for me and everybody listening is to be reminded that when we're present, sometimes we get directed. Like you said, what's my assignment? Sometimes that assignment will take you off in a direction that you don't expect. And it's not something you'd even predict necessarily.
Right.
And then voila.
Yeah. Absolutely. For me, when we're saying that, a couple things, when you're talking about athletes, I think of Michael Jordan in the heyday when they were in the three-peat stage with the Chicago Bulls. I was living in Chicago at the time. It was amazing. And I remember watching him on TV, and he could do no wrong. He would just get 3-pointers, and he's like looking at like the camera, like, I don't know what's going on. It was just that. Right.
The shrug, the famous shrug. It's like,
I've got chills thinking about that. But for me, it's like we have to be able to slow down enough to be able to feel ourselves, because with the work that I do and where I have come from is the understanding that everything is energy. And, if we want to affect and deliberately create our lives the way we want to, we have to be aware of the energy that we're sending out. And so that means we have to be aware. We have to check in and go, what thought am I thinking? If I'm feeling bad all of a sudden, and I was feeling good before, what thought brought me to that feeling place that all of a sudden dragged me down? And to be able to self-regulate in that way. And we have to be present with ourselves to even be able to do that. So I think the key to to even working with the universal laws, to even say, am I in the connection and alignment with abundance right now? We have to be able to connect with ourselves and be present with ourselves. And I feel like if we're present with ourselves, then everything else we can be present with. Because if I'm not present and connected to myself, I can't be present, connected to my husband or my kids or clients.
I think you're saying this. So if this is not a part of that, let me know.
Okay.
We can't give anything. I mean, we'll all want to give, right? Everybody has a generous giving heart. I don't care who it is. Nobody's born selfish, right? But we can't give anything we don't have. So if you don't understand self-love, how do you love anybody? You do love people, but your version of loving someone is the version that you know of yourself, of how you love yourself. The judgment, your self-judgment becomes the judgment that is your projection and what you mirror out into the world, right?
Exactly. Everything starts inside of us. Everything starts, whether it's a relationship with money, we think it's outside of ourselves, or we're frustrated we don't have enough, or maybe we have enough, but we want to make more. All of that starts, every single relationship, and we're in relationship with everything in this universe because everything's energy, everything carries a vibration. It's all interconnected. So the thoughts I think about my mother, if I'm holding negative thoughts about her and I don't shift or pivot into a different way of thinking about her, she cannot show up differently in my life. If I am thinking that the guy that just cut me off in traffic is a total jerk, and I hold that inside of me, I'm going to continue to drive around with jerks because I'm holding this inside of me. All relationships and everything that's affected starts with us. And so, that's one of the things I've had to do, like a lot of healing and work on within myself, is because I was very, very filled with lack, never felt like I was enough. Never ever felt good enough, never felt pretty enough, never felt, I had enough money or that I had this or that. It was all rooted in lack, which I find most people, I think it's the Achilles heel for most people, because we're just seeped in it in our society. But when I stopped judging myself so much and went, you know what, I wasn't allowed to make mistakes. I had to be perfect. And, I saw my dad do that. He was a mechanical engineer, brilliant guy. But if he ever made a mistake, oh boy, did he let himself have it. And I remember, I was just laughing with my husband. If I ever got hurt as a kid, I remember one time I flipped over my 10-speed bike, and I came home and I had like this big, scab on my forehead and over here. And my dad took one look at me and he goes, you effed up your face. And he starts yelling. I got in trouble for getting hurt. So it was like, there were no mistakes allowed to be made. You had to be perfect. And, I learned that from the master. So inside of myself, when I would make a mistake, oh my God, would I let myself have it and beat myself up? And of course, what came in here translated out there. So if it was a boyfriend or a husband or, whatever, thank God I was able to heal that before I had kids. That came out as a judgment, as a criticism. As within, so without. It's not a nice little saying. It's true.
Yes. Yes. Wow. So the betrayal that you, when you think somebody's going to betray you, they often do for that same reason, right? We're projecting ourselves out into the world, and then the world reflects that experience back to us. That's the outpicturing of that inside, that inner, those thoughts, those feelings, etc. So
law of attraction.
Yeah. There's a great book that I'm referring out lots these days. It's called The Presence Process, Michael Brown, which is a beautiful book that explores that. Where do those things start? So lots of people have self-sabotage. They get it that it's their own doing. They own it. It's like the first page of the personal development handbook. You own your life. You're responsible for everything. Okay, great. What the fuck do I do with that? Like, okay, fine. Now, where does, how do I stop it? How do I change it? And yeah, the consciousness is so important. The intention to change something is so important. And yet there's also stuff going on that we don't yet understand and aren't aware of. So I love that book for that purpose. This is a real great exploration back to childhood and a story like the one you just communicated, because that's such a visceral experience of what perfection looks like, or what it means to, like you say, to have to avoid making mistakes at all costs, because on top of the mistake, it also means, judgment, disapproval, lack of, being not enough, love being conditional. Exactly. So sort of at the first domino these days for me, and again, I say it as often as I can. So if it makes sense to people, cool. And if not, then not. But is unconditional love for yourself, self-love. And to get to that place of self-love, we have to take care of ourselves. Like the first domino, and I'm looking so curious. I'm so curious to see if I'll be, something will show up that says, hey, this is before that. Like what can we do to create a better example of what love looks like to ourselves? Because our parents modeled, in many ways, the best they could do is model their version of self-love, right? And that was an imprint from their parents often, and it also had a lot to do with the way they related. And so we grew up, I think, I haven't met anybody yet that really has a great example of what self-love looked like. Mm-hmm. They've got this sort of, interesting mix of what their parents did and said, as well as what they saw in society. And it's a bit it's jumbled up. And the last example of self-love that I feel like I've seen is when kids are learning how to walk. Like, so you have little ones still, but not walking, like just getting started walking age, right? What's your youngest?
He's turning 7 in a few weeks.
Yeah. So it's been a while. But you remember when he was walking, with learning to, and falling down and making a mess all the time, right? You had to cover up the sharp objects in the house, right? On the tables and stuff, because he'd be falling all the time. He never looked at your beautiful son and said, he'll never walk. Look at this idiot. He'll never, ever walk, let alone run. Hello. Yeah. Right. Even the best, on the scale of best to worst parents, even the worst of them would never, ever only look at their kid and go, be walking soon. Right. No question. Be walking, be running. Right. And there's this unconditional acceptance of a child as it's falling and falling and falling, learning to walk. And so there's no judgment even from those parents that might otherwise do awful things with their kids. They never look at that kid and say that kid will never walk. It defies reason.
Yeah.
So in that moment, that child understands what it feels like on an emotional level to be accepted.
Yes.
And loved unconditionally. And then of course we put all these conditions around our love for ourselves and for other people. So it's when you talk about pivot, which you're going to do in just a second, it's a lot of times those conversations have to do with people's livelihood. What are they doing for work, and is it their purpose? Is it why they were born? Does it fulfill them or not? And you and I have similar stories that we were doing things that didn't fill us up. It didn't fill us on the inside. So even though they were profitable and were maybe good business reasons to stay doing it, we stopped doing it because it was hurting us, hurting our heart, kind of eroding us. Yeah. But the essential pivot is the pivot of how you look at yourself, regardless of the work you do, the amount of money you make, because we know so many people that have lots of money and still live in scarcity.
Oh, totally.
They're still living from that place of it kind of will never be enough to make you enough, right?
Or they're afraid to lose what they already have, and which is still coming from scarcity. It's just there's never a place of fulfillment or satisfaction,
What's your distinction on scarce? This is where I was leading. I'd love to get your thoughts on distinction between scarcity and abundance, because I know you teach this to a lot of people.
The most important law, I feel like, is the law of sufficiency and abundance. And it's not just law of abundance, it's the law of sufficiency and abundance. So if you look at, say, the law of polarity on a scale and a spectrum of lack being on one pole and abundance being on the other pole, the doorway into abundance is being satisfied It's having that satisfaction. Doesn't mean you're over the moon excited, like, oh my God, end all be all, but you're at least in a place of appreciation and gratitude. Those two places. And I know we've all heard that, but it's not a mind thing. It's a feeling thing. It's not going, I'm grateful for this, I'm appreciative of that. It's like really feeling, no matter if you have $5 to your name, you've got $5, but most people go, I only have $5 to my name. It's like, but you've got $5. What could you do with the $5? It's the same condition, but it's a very different perspective. And the one will continue to constantly repeat and give back more lack and limitation. The other one opens the door for more possibilities and absolutely endless ways of creating more money, because we're not these three-dimensional things, these biosuits that walk around with the ego. We're so much more than that. We're multidimensional beings, and we live in a multidimensional universe where abundance is actually the reality. Lack is totally man-made. And most of us have, it's mass consciousness, most of us are seeped in that. And if you start choosing, we all have a choice. That's the pivot almost all day, every day, is the choice in how am I going to see this perspective? Am I going to look through the lens of lack, or I'm at least going to look and see what can I be positive about it? One of the pivot story I wanted to share with you, I was actually got promoted from pharmaceutical rep to a sales training manager when I went to Philadelphia. So I landed on the West Coast, or the East Coast, excuse me. And I had a boss that we called him the Eagle, because he was just constantly looking over everybody. And he was just one of those sneaky kind of guys that would come in my office and just kind of, try to see if he could find something wrong. And I would have people that would tell me, your boss was in your office sneaking around looking through your files. And I'm like, look around. I don't know what he thinks he's going to find. But he would do that. And he would, try to make us do these projects and then throw us under the bus. It was just very odd. And I in that moment, it was like, okay, how can I find the positive aspects? How can I at least be satisfied with this situation? And I would look for, and I deliberately would, before I would go to work, on my way to work, I would think about all the reasons why I was blessed to have this particular job in this particular situation. And for one, it was like, I made good money. I didn't have to work on nights and weekends so that I could do my coaching, because I was building my business at the time. I was able to take weekends off and do conferences to learn more about how to build my business. I mean, there were so many different positive things that I could still, look at. And that's where the opening comes from, is that space of looking for what is right and good versus what's wrong and bad. And that's where the appreciation and gratitude lives. It's in that middle that opens that door to more abundance.
My goodness. You and I have so much more in common than we even know. It's so funny. In Pivot, we talk about building a plan B. So I didn't give up practicing law for reasons that related to responsibilities, family, stuff like that, right? Yeah. Legit stuff. But it gave me, so that idea of creating something else that was really more the calling, was happening simultaneously with just being appreciative that I had a vehicle that was working at the time, even though it wasn't the vehicle for the long haul. Like, I wasn't going to drive that one to the finish line. That was the decision, right? I'm not going to be a lawyer till I'm 70 years old or whatever. But it was still such a great vehicle that allowed me to travel like you, building a business that I knew nothing about at the beginning, that required me to learn and invest and get more education and be mentored and guided, right? And all of that could only happen because that first bridge, that plan A, was still working.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's something to really be appreciative of. So people listening to this right now, my God, if you've got a job or you're in a business or something and it's paying the bills, it's doing its job, it doesn't mean you have to settle for that. It's not an either or, it's both.
Yes.
Right? Which is, either or is a scarcity that's rooted in scarcity. I listen to language, very kind of acutely sensitive to that now. So the word need, whenever I hear somebody say need, I see it in marketing, I see it in anything. I go, this is all scarcity-based stuff, because you don't need any of it. There's no need. But what we need oxygen, right? We need love. We need food. Very few things we actually need.
Yeah.
And the rest is, what
Yeah.
we want or what we think we want.
Well, it was interesting too, because around this time I was getting out of my previous marriage, and I had a choice. I could sit there and think, oh, what a jerk, or, oh, he didn't give me this, or, all the woes that I would have had about this particular relationship. But I chose to leave with love, and I did. And I chose to only feel grateful and appreciative for the time that I was in that 8-year relationship, five-year marriage, because it led me to who I was, to be able to then attract Frederick into my life. And so many people, oh, that my ex, he's such a this, he's such a that, all that negativity, all that's still rooted in lack and limitation. And that's not being in that sweet spot of being in the positive aspects, being in satisfaction. I deliberately released any negativity or any resentment or any anger or any hurt that I had from leaving that relationship. And now I hold it. Whenever I think of him, I just hold my heart, because he's such a good guy. And I had 8 great years with him. And I'm so grateful who I became in the process, so that I was then ready for my love, Frederick. And, it's that perspective. Whatever I'm holding inside of myself as resentment, as anger, as anything that is pulling my energy down, I'm going to continue. I wouldn't have attracted a Frederick. I would have attracted another person that would have matched the level of resentment or anger that I was at. It's law.
Can you repeat that? I especially want people to hear that one again.
Yeah. Whatever whatever's your set point. If you're feeling anger, resentment, disappointment, whatever it is, that's yours to own, and it's energy, and you can release it. Because if you don't, you're still in that place, and you will continue to attract people, situations, circumstances that bring out that feeling inside of you.
Yeah. And this is part of what you coach folks on, right? On that law of attraction, what it is that you truly attract into your life, yes. Which is counterintuitive, because we feel like we're justified. There's a lot of justification in a lot of people's story. Again, kind of classic personal development stuff where we say, I'll leave your story at the door. I don't want to hear your story, all that kind of stuff. But people are involved in living their story every day, every minute of the day. They're giving meaning to things. And the meaning they give becomes, at some point, the story that they'll tell about it.
Absolutely.
And that if the story is one of anger and resentment and other things, well, you just get more. The universe will give you more opportunity to what's the right word, to affirm, right? Reaffirm your story, your meaning that you give to things. People cheat you, no problem. People cheat me right? They cheat you all the time. I can't make enough money. You never have enough money. I just have enough to pay my bills. Always just enough to pay the bills, right? Yeah. I can't get ahead. Whatever it is, I'm not lucky in love, right? I can't lose, I can't get down to the weight that I want. It's just one sort of opportunity
It's so sad. My parents are lovely people. My mom's 81 and my dad's 85. And this is about a month ago. I called my mom up. I think it was like 9:30 in the morning in Arizona. And I said, "Are you still in bed?" She goes, "I know, it's horrible. Oh my God, I got to get up." I go, "Why? Like, you're 81, dad's 85. If you guys can't sleep in and not put your alarm clock and just sleep until 11 o'clock for no other reason because you can, when are you going to be able to do that?" And she was like, "Oh, you're right. We can." And so she allowed herself to release the guilt. But then when it came to the conversation about money, I was raised with other people. Must be nice to be them. The other people have the money. We don't. And even though my dad worked his butt off and provided a beautiful life for my mom, she's got beautiful jewelry. She lives in a beautiful home. She drives a beautiful car. She's got, they have their houses paid off. I mean, they have all that they will need in their lifetime. It's never enough. And so it doesn't really matter what has manifested. If you're still holding this, they will never, I know. I mean, they came to my seminar and I did this whole thing on money and how you can change your relationship with money. And still the next day, my mom's like, yeah, well, must be nice. I don't have any money. I'm like, oh my God. Oh, they're going to die with this feeling of lack for money and letting money master them instead of them being the master over money or anything else, And it's like, it's so sad. So, that I understand that that's a much older generation. They didn't have personal development and, they didn't change their stories and they don't do the kind of things that, thank God, we get to do when we hear ourselves saying something that doesn't feel good, that comes from limitation or scarcity in any way, to be able to have that mindset and then change the perspective. We were raised like that. I get that. But it just makes me so sad when I even hear 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds that, it's like they have their whole life ahead of them, focused and what's wrong, what's lacking, what's not enough, and living in their stories. It's money is hard to come by. Oh, I can't ever get ahead. There's not enough jobs out there. That's going to be your reality if you really believe that. We create from our beliefs.
Time for a pivot.
Yeah, time for a pivot.
Will you share a little bit about one of your pivot journeys with us?
I will, actually. So I kind of started talking about my boss, Dan, the Eagle, and there was a whole harassment. There was like 3 other people that had a harassment suits with him at the company. And the head of marketing came to me and said, I understand that Dan is your next, you're Dan's next victim. And I'd like to give you a position in marketing. And she was going to pay me more money, I'd be totally away from him. But at this time I met Frederick and he lived in Montreal. I was living in Philadelphia. And I also knew what it felt like to coach someone and to have them change their life. And that was what I really wanted to do. And at the time, I didn't, I was making money off of it, but there was no way I could earn a living like I did, with, at least I thought, right?
With your job.
With my job. And so she offered me this position and I had to take a step back and, ask myself, if I do this, if I take this marketing position, I won't be able to move to Montreal. I won't be able to start my own business. I won't be able to follow what my heart is wanting to go. And I turned her down and I made the choice to move to Montreal, to a city where when I got here, it was 70 below zero. There were snowbanks that were higher than the cars next to me. I couldn't even see the cars. It's French language. They have money that's loony and toonies. Everything was different. Everything was in French, in kilometers instead of miles, and centigrade instead of Fahrenheit. I mean, everything was like different. But it was, for me, I used Dan as the fuel for my fire. I didn't use him to beat me down. I used him as fire to get me out. And I turned down the marketing position because I wanted to follow my heart. And I knew that, here's the big key. If I could create abundance at a job, my job is not the source of my financial freedom. It's not the source of my money. It's not the source of my abundance. Me, the multidimensional being, the one that breathes me, is the source of my abundance. So if I could create it there in a job, I could create it over here in my own business. And within less than a year of leaving corporate America and going out on my own, I was making as much, if not more, because I truly believed that me, the bigger me, creates my abundance, not my job. We look at the job or the circumstance that we're in as the only way, we're so limiting. And why would you want to limit the divine?
Mm. Not if you had an understanding of the divine, which is part of the, yeah. Mm. Wow.
I say there are 3 things, honestly, that people, like that old perspective about 600 years ago where everybody thought the world was flat. Think about that. Everybody really thought the world was flat until it was discovered that the world was actually round. And what that did to travel and, the possibilities. I bet back in the day, I wasn't born then, but I can understand human beings. Back in the day, people were like, nope, the world is flat. It's like they wanted to argue for their limitations. Nope, there's no way it's round. I bet. But there's three things that we still do that need to shift our perspectives from being flat to a round world. And one of them is knowing yourself as a multidimensional being instead of just what you see, feel, touch, taste, and smell. There's so much more going on here. Like, we're 4% of what's really going on here. The other 96% is all non-physical. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we think that we have like something outside of us has superpowers and that we're victim to whatever circumstances happen. We all have superpowers because we all can choose our thoughts. We all can choose our emotions. We all choose our perspectives, and we all choose the energy that we want to give out. That's a superpower because we get to deliberately choose and design our lives. Each one of us has it. Everyone. It's not something outside of us that only one person has it or one thing, entity. We all have it. We're all breathing it every day. And the third thing is we have to shift our mindset from lack and limitation, which is shit, but lack and limitation to abundance and prosperity, because that's the truth. And when you start looking for things to be grateful for, when you start looking for evidence of abundance in your life, you start seeing more evidence of abundance in your life. I mean, I've been in both places. The old saying, I've been rich, I've been poor. I've been in lack, and that is the worst, horrible place to be. And I've been in abundance, and whenever stuff comes up and where it's like it's not in alignment with that, it's painful. Do I have a minute to share a quick story?
Please.
This is a good pivot story that you're going to appreciate, Adam. Every Saturday, my husband and I have always had a deal ever since we had kids. Sunday's his day to go golf in the morning. I go and get massages every Saturday. That's our deal. Gives him alone time with the kids. I get alone time with the kids. We get our, I don't have to be a mom. I don't have to be a wife. I don't have to be a business owner. I get to be Christy, just getting a nice massage. So one Saturday, this is, I don't know, maybe 8 months ago or so, I'm laying there getting my amazing massage. And all of a sudden I started feeling anxious, like freaking out anxious while I'm on the table getting a massage. Now, knowing what I know and all the work that I've done on myself, I know that I need to follow that energy because everything's energy. So I started asking myself, what's the anxiety about? And this overwhelming fear came up. Now, the Course in Miracles talks about there's two primary emotions, fear and love. I say let's go deeper because under fear is always lack. Always. Lack is the cause and root of every negative emotion, including fear. So I said, okay, there's fear there, but what's the fear? What's the lack? What lack thoughts am I thinking that it's creating this feeling of fear? And I heard inside, and you all might think I'm crazy because I might sound like Sybil, but I heard a voice say, you've used it all up. And I got curious and I said, I've used all of what up? Success. You've used up all of your success. There's no more success for you. And I went, interesting. And I started talking to that voice. I'm like, there isn't some pie with a limited amount where I've used it all up. I have a bakery. I can make as many pies as I want to make. This is an abundant universe. And so I started feeling within myself, it was in my solar plexus, where this very old part of me, this very old thought was coming up saying, I'm done. I've used it all up. And I was able to just bring in that energy of abundance and completely pivot my energetic field into a space of abundance and feel that feeling of abundance. And I swear that feeling of lack went away. That thought has never come back. And it's completely, totally different. And the trajectory of that, if I would have numbed it or ignored it, I might all of a sudden find myself sabotaging any success that I have because I think that I've used it all up.
Yeah, because you were getting a message, right? There was a messenger, and you could have sent the messenger away. You could have shot the messenger.
Yeah.
Like you say, numb the messenger, control the messenger, right?
Yes.
All those things we do from time to time. Yeah, right. And then the messenger would have gone away because you would have succeeded. as we all do,
Yeah.
except the messenger doesn't go away forever. And that's where the sabotage comes from.
Yeah.
Because then the messenger comes back to get your knock, knock, right? Get your attention again. You going to pay attention this time?
Yeah. This time it's manifested. Something, it might be just a feeling, but next time it might be something that manifests so that I have to actually physically look at it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I've got a question for you.
Yes.
Do you think, it's probably the wrong way to phrase this. So I'm asking a question about the feeling or the thought. Do you believe or do you know whether that chain of events began with a feeling or began with a thought? What do you believe?
I truly believe that they are so connected together that it's like a thought becomes a feeling becomes a thought. I just think it is so interchangeable. Truthfully, I believe it started with a belief. There was some belief there in lack that created the thought that then created the feeling, and then the feeling created the thought, and then it gets bigger. So interesting.
This is just exploration. I'm just curious because for a long time, what I taught was, because it was what was taught to me, thoughts create feelings, create, the next thing that turns into outcomes, right? And really over the last year, my own journey has got me feeling, knowing that it's the feeling that comes first, and the feeling is rooted in something from the past, whether it's our emotional past, which is usually that earliest, those earliest experiences, emotional development experiences, or it's something that precedes that, but that ultimately it's a feeling that then triggers a way of interpreting the feeling. Like, as you get a feeling in your stomach, for example, I'm not making an argument here. I'm just actually really curious about this. So I'm not 1,000% sure, but like you get a stomach feeling and it could be my stomach is empty.
Right.
Which then triggers you to think, well, geez, you're hungry.
Right.
And we know that that's not necessarily a sign of hunger. It could be even dehydration. Oftentimes people eat, you've been through Wild Fit with Eric and all that. So the hungers, where do the hungers come from? That kind of thing. Could be that you're thirsty, not that you're hungry, but the feeling of inside goes, yeah, okay, I must be hungry. And it's incredible because where do we deal with this stuff at the root cause? Like that's my reason for being curious is I want to get at the root. What's the cause of causes? So interesting.
It's all energy. Well, I'll tell you what, I think we pay more attention to how we feel than what we think. Because at least for me in my, being on that table, there was no denying the anxiety I was feeling. I probably was having some thoughts somewhere about it. It didn't even get me to pay attention. It was that feeling place of just, I feel bad. And that's not the house I play in anymore. It used to be. I moved out of that neighborhood. So when I feel really bad and I'm feeling that kind of anxiety, I have to stop and pay attention because something's going on all emotions are trying to inform us in some way.
Yeah. To get our attention.
Yeah.
And ultimately this is sort of back to that beginning place of when do you get attention? Because we're seeking it. Yes. Because it's a signal that we're loved, that somehow the attention is, equals love.
Yeah.
And so something's trying to get your attention. Pay attention to me. Right?
Yes.
It's really, really fascinating. But
it is.
What a pivot, right? What a great way to just sort of reframe, or there's lots of ways to describe how it is that we handle. How do we make decisions? And I know we're wrapping up here, but I wanted to show you something because, again, you and I are so connected on so many different levels. It's really interesting. I have sitting on my desk this beautiful book. Any idea which book this is?
No.
It's got a blue cover.
A Course in Miracles. Isn't that interesting that I would even mention that?
Yes. And the New Beginning, chapter 30, page 625, where it's rules for decision. Because there's so much of what you're talking about is about we're making rules all the time, making decisions all the time, and we make them unconsciously, and obviously we have ones we make consciously. And the question is, how are you making those decisions? How are you making those choices? Like you said, those choices. Are you making those choices, those decisions with fear or with love, with God or with, some other thing that you might call the enemy or whatever you might call that? With abundance, are you making that decision, that choice from a place of abundance, or are you making that decision from a place of scarcity?
Yeah.
Right? We get that. That's truly empowering to know that we get to make that decision ourselves in every moment, so that someone that has a lot of money but still feels lack is living in scarcity despite their bank account. And someone that has very little in their bank account, for example, would be okay to have more, but for whatever reason, they have little, but is living with gratitude and appreciation. And they're abundant in that moment. They're deciding from a place and making choices from a place of appreciation, gratitude, love.
Well, for me, it's all about the essence that we choose to be in every moment, because I could just ask everybody right now to just drop into a moment when you felt joyful, when you felt just like bubbled up joy and you felt giddy, something happened, and you're just remembering it, or you're just, you don't even have to remember something, just getting into that field of joy. We live in a holographic universe, and anything that's ever been felt, we can tap into and feel. And so in this moment, if you're just intending to put your attention on that feeling of joy, your cells start to resonate with that sensation of joy. And nothing had to change in your outer reality. I didn't just give you $1 million. I didn't say you're going to go on this amazing trip. I didn't say you're going to get this promotion, or, here's the love of your life. Nothing out here changed. But inside of you, in a split second, just within even 16 seconds, 18 seconds, you could just start to feel yourself expanding instead of contracting. And that's the key, is that we always have that choice. No matter what our conditions are, we get to feel the way we want to feel, because we get that free will. We have that free choice. And when you do that, that's actually what changes all the outer circumstances and conditions anyway.
That's why I feel that the first domino is the feeling, for that exact reason. Because we can do that so much more naturally than trying to get control of our crazed head.
Yes.
Right? Because this thing is just, it's a lunatic at times. No matter how much work you've done on yourself, right? I mean, is that just me, Christy, or you buy into? Yeah.
I agree. But the exciting thing, what you're saying too, is that from a vibrational perspective, our emotions have much more stronger vibration than the thoughts that we think. So just by tuning in and changing, like just by, again, tapping into with your intention to feel abundance. Like what is, even if you don't physically know what that feels like, there's a part of you inside of you, the one that breathes you, is always connected to that abundance. So just with your intention to connect with that feeling of abundance, that's a much stronger vibration than even just thinking thoughts of abundance. It's about feeling, and it's the strongest vibration that we have is our feeling sense. It's our guidance system. It's our teacher. It's our informant.
The informant. I love that one. Is there a ritual or practice that you engage in every day that keep you in that place of centeredness or
yes,
appreciation?
I meditate pretty much every day. The days that I don't, I can tell that I haven't meditated. That's such a common zero level place that I need to start with, just to even be able to deliberately design the day that I want. And I take time throughout the day to just take a couple minutes to breathe and choose, how am I feeling right now? Let me amp up my energy. Let me just tap into that essence of for me is all about freedom. When I have that feeling and that sense of freedom, that's it for me.
Yeah. Ease.
Freedom is just it for me. And so if I can just take a minute just to connect with that feeling of freedom, that's it for me. I mean, abundance is awesome. Success is awesome. Joy is awesome. All the appreciation, gratitude, all of that. It just even, expands beyond that. But freedom is where I need to live. And that's my home. And so I definitely deliberately connect with that sense of freedom each and every day.
Yeah. Beautiful. So magnificent. I'll read this one thing from that section of Course in Miracles. Today, I will make no decisions by myself. So who do we make our decisions with? What do we make our decisions with? And to feel how it is you want to feel, to create the day you want to create. So you just engineer it. I don't know whether it's reverse engineering or it's something other than that, but you engineer it.
Yes.
Is a different way to go about living than by default, where the day just shows up any old way, or it shows up based on a lot of habitual thinking, which isn't really, and this is the part that's kind of odd too, that thinking isn't ours necessarily. It's partly ours, but it's a lot of what we've seen and we've been programmed to believe. Like you said, beliefs, where do those beliefs come from? We're not born with them. They show up because of our good intent, our well-intentioned parents, other sources, spiritual leaders, media, wherever, all that kind of stuff. And that's impacted and affected us, and in many ways infected our thinking. But our feeling, our sensing is innate. This is where we're the most natural and not very different, to our ancestors of hundreds or thousands of years ago, even that feeling, that sensing self. So thank you for sharing your pivot story, especially how it was that you tracked, where you went to track the source of the feeling, because I think that'll be really helpful for people when anxiety comes up, when worry or angst or anger or whatever, these things that come up as feelings that they show up in the head, but then you can track them and go, okay, so where actually do I sense that in my body? Where do I feel that? Is there a feeling that I can sort of attach it to and explore and be curious about that, as opposed to trying to necessarily figure out your head,
right?
Which only makes you kind of more dizzy at the time when you do that, can, right? Mm-hmm. So, Christy, what a joy! I mean, really a blessing.
Thank you.
I would do this even, like just to spend time with you is
I love you
so worth it. So
love you so much. I was looking forward to seeing you soon.
Oh my goodness!
Spend my time with you and Randy.
Indeed. So for everybody out there, we'll stop our love fest for just a second, so I can honor your presence as well. Please, definitely, Christy. What's a great way for people to come and check you out? Website or something where people can find you?
Yeah, they can go to ChristyWhitman.com. As a matter of fact, I have 7 days of meditations to help you realize and know that you and your life are unlimited. So 7 days in a row, different subjects on a meditation that I guide you through to help you just expand.
How divine. ChristyWhitman.com. So cool. And as always, we look forward to the next conversation and to engaging with you. So few ways for you guys to engage with us. Of course, if you haven't yet subscribed to the podcast, do that. Hello? Get them all, right? And of course, Start My Pivot. You can go to Start My Pivot community on Facebook. What a glorious group of people there. And I will remind you of something that I remind myself of every morning when I wake up. It's my morning ritual. And of course, the first thing we want to do in the morning is wake up. So what a joy, what a blessing to wake up, to be able to be guided to our assignment for the day. And of course, knowing in that moment that we do wake up physically and metaphorically, that we are more conscious tomorrow and every day than the day before. It's a fact, not a guess, but it's a fact that as you're waking up, taking your first deep, beautiful morning breath, that people will be taking their last. So wake up, be in gratitude, even for just a moment, just to sit in appreciation for the fact that you've been given another day, a holy, sacred day, to do what with, you get to decide. And lastly, stand up. What a blessing that is. And either throw your arms up in the air, put your hand on your chest, whatever you want to do, but say out loud, I love my life. I love my life. I love my life. And we love you all. And we'll see you very soon. Ciao for now, everybody.